Welcome to Say More from Boston Globe Opinion. I'm Anna Kusmer. Good mystery books can be picked up and enjoyed at a leisurely pace. But the best mystery books pick you up and don't put you down until they're done with you. I've been carried around many times over the years by the books of Tana French. She's a mystery author who was born here in New England, but spent her childhood all over the world. She's now canonically Irish, and her novels are rooted in Irish landscapes and culture. She's best known for her Dublin Murder Squad books, which are bestsellers and have been adapted for TV. Her latest work, The Keeper, wraps up a trilogy following a retired police detective from the US who moves to rural Ireland and sees the country with outside eyes. I loved it. Tana is joining me from her home in Dublin. It's such an honor to have you, Tana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, the main character in your new books is a man named Cal Hooper. He's an ex police officer, he's American, and he moves to rural Ireland. This is your first time having a non Irish main character. Why did you choose to have an outsider at the center of these books?
That's what I was interested in, was the idea of the outsider, because I had been reading a few Westerns and I was thinking how well they matched with the West of Ireland, how well all those Western tropes would map onto the West of Ireland. And one of those classic Western tropes that also shows up an awful lot in Irish drama and literature is the outsider in a small town. You know, the outsider who blows into a saloon and maybe he's got a past of his own, but things are going to change around him. He's going to be a catalyst. And the small town, in one way or another, for better or for worse, won't be the same when he's gone. So I like the idea of bringing that and a bunch of other Western tropes and putting them into the West of Ireland. And so hence the American who comes in and things change around him.
So, you yourself are an outsider in Ireland. Did you see Cal, this character, as being sort of a proxy for you seeing Ireland?
Not exactly, but you're right. The theme of the outsider is something that I've always been really interested in because my parents have like several nationalities between them. I grew up moving all over the world. I was what they call now a third culture kid, but we kind of basically called it international brat. So I've always been an outsider everywhere, and it gives you a very interesting viewpoint because you have to be very aware of what you're stepping into. The things that monocultural people will take for granted as, the default, the way things are, you can't take them for granted because they probably change every couple of years. How far apart do people stand when they're talking to each other? How loud are they? Who do you tease and to what extent? You've got to be very alert to those things as an outsider. And it means that you have a perspective on any society that you end up living in that's probably a little different from the insiders and maybe a little more tuned into the smaller nuances. And that experience of being an outsider, especially in a place that's very tight knit, very deeply rooted. It's a strange one. It's a precarious one. It's one that has lots of fascination and lots of pitfalls. So I wanted to explore that. And Cal experiences it differently from how I did because he is American. He's deeply rooted in America. He has a home and a place of his own, whereas I kind of don't. You know, Ireland's my home. When I moved here, it was my home as much as anywhere else. But I like that idea of navigating the transition from outsider to someone who lives here, whether he's an insider or not.
So, what are some specific things that Cal in the book notices about Irish culture that you yourself noticed? Like, how did you draw from your own kind of observations when you first moved to Ireland?
Well, one of the major ones that showed up for me and shows up for Cal, I moved here from Italy, right? In Rome, when people are annoyed or happy or any emotion at all, basically, it's all out on the surface. It is loud and it is in your face. And so that's what I was accustomed to. But Ireland is much more circuitous, much more kind of subtle about anything the Irish want to communicate. It doesn't come straight at you, especially I find more in rural Ireland.
Hmm.
Things come at you obliquely. People will wander around a subject, wander around something they want to say to you. There's this atmosphere of the phrase is whatever you say nothing. Don't say anything too openly. It might be used against you. It might lead to consequences. It might set off a domino trail that you really don't want to deal with. So people are quite oblique about things. And that took quite a lot of getting used to because I was used to just going in and saying the thing,
Right.
And so's Cal, who is American, who in Chicago, well, he's not from Chicago originally, but he's lived there, which is a much more direct culture. So he has to get used to the fact that when someone says something to him, they may actually be telling him something that will take them a long time to come around to and that is layered in under the actual words. That's one of the things he has to get used to. That's probably the main one.
I maybe it's just because I was reading it with these eyes, or maybe because this is the first time you have an outsider sort of observing Irish culture. I just noticed a lot of really interesting passages where you're almost like, I don't know, meditating on the Irish psyche. Did the perspective of Cal give you more leeway to sort of meditate on sort of Irish history and how that affects the culture?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Ireland is a post-colonial country, and that makes huge, huge difference to the entire mentality. I mean, even what I was talking about just now, where people are quite oblique about communicating anything, especially anything with any like heavy emotional charge. I think that has a certain amount of post-colonial resonance, where if you've spent centuries culturally in a position where anything that you say could in fact have huge consequences and be used by occupying power, an oppressor, it makes you quite cautious about what you say and what you say openly. So I think that's threaded through that entire cultural fabric. And I think Cal definitely, because he's seeing these cultural differences in a way that none of my previous narrators did, he's going to be thinking about them. And he's going to be thinking in particular about the Irish relationship with authority, which I think is
Mm.
very, very deeply rooted in history. We've got a weird relationship with authority over here where we don't like to defy it openly. We don't like to stand up against it, but we really like finding clever ways around it. So it makes for an interesting combination where you can see these people who have been the subject of really brutal penal laws and oppression, like valuing the skill of finding a clever way to outwit authority. But now it's changed because the people who are in authority, the government, are in fact elected by the Irish. They are the Irish. And yet you still have this mentality that you'll get some politician who took a ton of bribes or something. And there's a slight undercurrent of fair play to him, he stuck it to the man. It's like, dude, you are the man. We are the man. What do you mean he stuck it to the man?
Right.
But there's still that respect for outwitting authority underlying.
Mm. So you say you grew up all around the world. Where are some of the places that you lived when you were a kid?
I was born in Vermont, and I was also in Florence, in Italy, in Washington, D.C., in a couple of places in Malawi, in Rome, and then in Ireland when I was 17.
Having the whole world to choose from as an adult, what made you decide to lay roots in Ireland?
Well, when I finished school, I was in international school in Rome, and there wasn't really any particular place that I considered home. There wasn't any natural place to go to. It wasn't that there was anywhere where, that's the home I'm going back to. And we've been going back to Ireland for summers for much of my childhood. And that's where I had friends. That's where I had a stronger sense of how people worked, of where the places were. I knew what bus route to take into town in Dublin. I knew some of the slang. I knew, yeah, how to have a laugh with people. It seemed like the natural place to go.
I mean, I think of Ireland as being one of the literary capitals of the world. Was that something that you connected with?
It wasn't so much the Irish like written word as the Irish spoken word. I
Mm.
love the Irish chat, the Irish banter. I love the sense of humor. I love the fact that, anyone will talk to anyone and can keep a conversation going about just about anything, whether they know anything about it or not. We can still have a great chat about anything. I like that.
The fact that you written almost exclusively in Ireland, being such a worldly person, did Ireland sort of ignite your writerly, I don't know, inspiration? Like, did Ireland, the place, sort of help you unlock this great writer that was within you?
I bet it did. I mean, that's one I haven't really thought about, but I bet it made a big difference because the island I moved to in particular, less so now, but it was very deeply rooted. There were communities that go back literally a millennium. People know each other for generations. It's full of communities where your relationship with the neighbor is not just based on your relationship with the neighbor. It's based on your relationship with each other's parents and their aunts and their cousins and their grandparents. And well, that's not really my cousin, but she is my cousin because her mind,
Yeah.
it's this incredibly intertwined and intermeshed communities. And I found that fascinating because it was so much the opposite of what I'd grown up with. Like everybody I know, maybe you know each other for a couple of years and then one of you moves across the world. None of you live anywhere near your relatives. So I found this absolutely fascinating. Like my husband comes from one of these inner city communities that go back to Viking times. And when you ask him how he's related to somebody, you had better be prepared for something that goes on for about 10 minutes, includes about 10 different kinds of relationships, and probably ends up with, so we're not actually blood related, but she's my cousin anyway.
Right.
That kind of thing. And I thought that was amazing. It had a kind of magic for me, the idea that you could have these ties and these roots that went so deep. And they do show up a lot in a lot of my books. In Faithful Place, that's so much there. And
Mm.
in all of these, that's so much there. The idea of roots, I think that's the thing that Ireland really hit me with, and the thing that I really, really wanted to write about.
Here in Boston, we have an endless fascination with the Irish. Obviously, we have a huge Irish diaspora here. A lot of our city culture, I think, comes from Ireland. The humor for sure, the
Oh,
wit,
yeah.
the saltiness.
Yeah.
Do you feel, I mean, you were born in Vermont. I know you didn't spend a ton of time here, but do you feel like there are some resonances between New England and Ireland? Like, are we right to be obsessed with the Irish over here?
Oh, the connections are so there. They're so there. I had a flatmate from Boston, lovely flatmate from Boston for a while. And I went over to Boston a few times. I've spent a bit of time there. You would know that the Irish influence is there just even by hearing the rhythms of the conversation and the sense of humor and the way Boston people will slag each other, the way they show affection by teasing and by humor and by back and forth banter and that currency of conversation, where if you can keep the conversation snapping and going, that's valued in Boston in the same way that it is in Ireland. So, oh yeah, no, it underlies the culture. I felt very at ease there.
More of my conversation with Tana French after a short break. So, Tana, earlier you said that this new Cal Hooper trilogy, it mashes together the mystery genre, which you're known for, but also this Western genre. So, what are some other ways that the Western tradition inspired these books?
I'd never read any Westerns, right? And then somebody whose taste I trust recommended Lonesome Dove. And I
Hmm.
started it and I went, wow, this is not what I was expecting at all. And I got onto others, True Grit, and for more modern stuff, The Sisters Brothers. I was like, this really matches quite well with the West of Ireland because you've got this sense of the harsh country that
Hmm.
demands both physical and emotional toughness from anybody who wants to make a living from it. But you've also got this sense of people who are so far removed geographically and culturally from the centers of power that they feel like the power brokers really know nothing about them and care less. And if they want a cohesive society, they're going to have to make their own rules and enforce their own rules. And that to me meshed quite well with Irish drama and with the West of Ireland, where people do often feel like those suits up in Dublin know nothing about them, don't care. And they're just going to have to run things if they want them to run. It's not lawlessness, right? It's just
Hmm.
a different kind of law. And it was a contrast between mystery and Western that really interested me because in mystery, law and justice are a very clearly defined system. The rules are there. They're clear and they're in black and white. But in the Western genre, it's very, very different. The rules are kind of homemade, handmade,
Hmm.
rough-edged, and they shift with the demands of the situation. And they're very far from black and white. Like there's a very strong awareness in Westerns that it's, well, in the best ones anyway, that it's not good over here, bad over here.
Hmm.
It's good people sometimes do bad people sometimes do good things, some people are neither, and some situations have no possible good thing that you can do. And you're going to have to work out the rules. You're going to have to define justice. You're going to have to define what is a crime and what is allowed. as you go, you're going to have to come together as a community and wing it, which, like everything else, has its good sides and its bad sides. And I was interested in what would happen when those two relationships with the idea of justice came into contact and possibly into conflict.
Mm.
And so Cal, of course, brings the detective side because he is a detective, and he's coming into a community that lives very much by the Western genre definition of justice and law.
Another theme that really struck me in these new books is, especially this third one, is progress and the conflict between, in this particular town, this traditional farming culture and industrialization. There's even talk of a data center coming, which felt like, I'm like, oh yeah, that felt like a real world moment. I'm like, data centers, this is like a big aspect of um, rural development, and this debate will be playing out in rural places all over the world, definitely Ireland, definitely the US. Do you see this debate playing out around you in rural Ireland, this sort of push and pull between development that brings kind of economic prosperity but might challenge or diminish a very ingrained culture and way of life?
Oh yeah, hugely. We've always had, I say we, Ireland, we've always had an odd relationship with that balance between past and future. And I think, it's natural in a country whose past is pretty traumatic and pretty brutal and has a lot of complex stuff that hasn't necessarily fully been worked through. So I think there is a tendency to go, well, we can throw the past away. It was pretty crap. Let's just ditch it. And I think that tendency is still here. Like you mentioned the data centers. We're the data center capital of the world.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah. And the government is going, bring more in. Yes, please, we'll put more in. And people aren't necessarily pleased because, of course, this isn't great in terms of electricity. It isn't great in terms of clean water. It isn't great in terms of emissions. So we're going to be having to pay the fines for not meeting our emissions reduction targets. We are going to be dealing with electricity shortages, water shortages. God knows what the data centers are doing to the environment around us. But we have to do it because this is the future. Why would you want to stop progress? And I think that is playing out in much more concrete ways in rural Ireland because there is, in fact, a way of life that's under a certain amount of threat. Farmers are finding it harder and harder to deal with everything from climate change to, more and more regulations. You've got young people who can't find anywhere to live. They're emigrating. There are schools closing down the country because there aren't enough children for them. And so a very community-based way of life is under threat. And of course, it's not necessarily that it was idyllic. Of course it wasn't. Nothing ever is. There are always dark places. But rather than being allowed to change and progress organically, this way of life is having vast change just forced on it, whether anyone wants it or not. And I think people are trying very hard to find a way to balance the good things of the past, of tradition, and the good things that progress offers. I'm not sure we're doing a great job of it.
I guess in all of your books, there's a suspicious death that a mystery unfolds from. That's a classic mystery trope, obviously. And at one point in this new book, you say that murder makes demands on society, like it demands action and attention. Why is a murder mystery such a great way to draw a portrait of place? Why is the genre so kind of endlessly rich and exciting for you?
Oh, for me, right? I could talk about this all day because murder mysteries for me are one of the genres that have the best and most immediate window into a time and place. Because murder happens everywhere, right? It's one of the first things that we have in the Bible. It happens in absolutely every time and place. But the reasons for which it happens are so very, very different. Like if you find out that someone has been murdered over a piece of land, you are not in the middle of a nomadic tribe who wander around from place to place because land just isn't that kind of priority. You know that you're in a society where
Mm.
land and land ownership are so crucial, are so core to the priorities and the needs of people within that culture that someone is willing to kill over this. It tells you a huge amount about a society's values, about its priorities, and about its dark places. What matters here? What is really, really core? What is that bedrock that underlies people's psyche? in that time and place. It's why I read a lot of historical true crime, because there are very few better ways to get a window into what matters in a certain time and place. And it's what I love about the mystery genre is because, for one thing, right, I love the fact that it gives you a clean structure. A kills B, C finds out who done it. Because I write long anyway, right? If I didn't have that structure, I'd just keep writing. I like my characters. I'd just keep going. It'd be a million words later. It'd be 2 years over deadline, and I would never be done. But this mystery framework keeps me to a structure where I have to finish the book. But the other reason I love it is it's just cut straight to the heart of what a society cares about. And it can tell you more. It can give you this cross section in a way that I think many other genres, well, of course, all genres can do that. All genres do that. There's a little more work to get to that, whereas mystery just lets you cut straight in there.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the where you say murder makes demands, it's almost like it takes a place and puts, just drops a bomb in it or something. Like it just creates all of the kind of brings everyone out, like their relationship with each other, and it just disrupts in a way that's probably really interesting from a writer perspective.
Oh yeah, I mean the usual thing is if you don't feel that the book is going well or is interesting enough, put a stressor on your character, mess with their head, like screw up their life, and then under pressure, things start to surface, things start to come out, everything that is being kept hidden or that is being glossed over in a way suddenly comes to the surface, and murder does that. I mean, it's the equivalent of, how at family Christmas dinner, if tensions are there, they are going to surface because everybody's in that pressure cooker situation. And murder does the same thing. It puts everybody under scrutiny, it puts everybody under pressure. So any fragility is going to turn into a full crack. Anything that's been hidden is going to pop out. And that makes for very interesting relationships. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's characters and their relationships and how they move forward and develop.
Absolutely. So my last question is, you write so lovingly and beautifully about dogs in this new series. And I feel strongly that you're likely a dog person. I'm wondering if I'm right.
I'm delighted you said that because I'm not a dog person. I love dogs. I think they're great, but I don't want one. I like going over to other people's houses and snuggling their dog. No, Cal just felt like he needed a dog. He seemed like somebody who would be really, really good with a dog.
Most of the main characters have a dog
Yeah,
companion,
everybody's got
and
a dog.
they're very central, seemingly, to the culture of this
Yeah,
place. Can you talk about that a
yeah.
little bit?
I think some of it's professional. Like an awful lot of sheep farmers down the country will have a dog. They are still one of the absolute essentials of a sheep farm. And that relationship between the farmer and the dog, their signals are so perfect. The dog is just like he is another person on the farm helping out. But I think also if you are down the country and going out and exploring this incredibly gorgeous Irish countryside, there's no better way to do it than with a dog. I think if I were living down the country, I probably would have one
Right.
because it's different. It's one thing to go for a walk on your own or with a friend, but if you're walking around the west of Ireland, you want a dog with you.
Yeah. Well, my dog just barks at nothing and eats garbage, so I don't know if if she's worthy for your narratives.
He probably wouldn't be very happy down this spooky bit
No,
of
definitely not.
woods. No.
She'd get chased by the sheep, I think. Yeah. Tana French is a best-selling author who lives in Dublin. She's best known for her Dublin Murder Squad series, but her latest book is called The Keeper. She's a keeper. Thank you so much, Tana, for your time.
Anna, thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Say More is a production of the Boston Globe. Today's episode was produced by me. Our editor is Jim Dow. Our engineer is Uzair Ahmed. If you like the show, please follow us and leave a review. You can email us at saymore@globe.com. I'm Anna Kusmer. Thanks for listening.